More volcano news, Icelanders are nearing 400,000, outlaw ducks are out of control, and more on this episode of the Reykjavik News Desk. So first up on the Reykjavik News Desk, we've got a lot of volcano news to cover, so let's get right into it. The eruption site has been opened and closed a few times, and as of the 20th, it's open again. Unfortunately, over the past week, there have been cases of tourists taking unnecessary risks. And just to give you some idea of how dynamic the situation is, in the late morning of the 20th, a new route to the eruption site was announced. About 3 hours later, that route was closed, or rather, it was recommended that people avoid that route altogether because it's far too rugged and dangerous. Even seasoned hikers were advising people to avoid using this route altogether. The situation can change at a moment's notice, in other words, so how are you supposed to stay on top of it? Well, fortunately, there's a website called Safe Travel, and I've linked to it in the description. And not only do they provide updates in English for the different paths to the eruption site and whether or not it's open or closed, they also provide some really helpful information on how to prepare for what can be a long and very challenging trek to the site and what to do once you're there. Really cannot stress enough, you have to check this out. I've put it in the description, so please do. Their site also has links to their app available for Android and iPhones, so you can put that right on your phone too, so you don't have to pull up your browser on your phone every single time you want to look at updates. And yeah, the eruption site itself is not safe to visit. This cannot be emphasized enough. Just to give you some idea about that, take a look at this photo. These are two tourists standing just meters away from the crater of the eruption. The crater is comprised of lava walls. There's these dams. They're created by cooled lava that go all the way around it. These are like enormous walls, and they look very sturdy and very formidable, but they can collapse at a moment's notice. And when that happens, then yeah, molten lava comes spewing forth. And rescue workers in the area were trying to get these two to get out of the area, which they eventually did. And then an hour later, the dam collapsed, sending tons of molten lava streaming forth. As I said in previous videos, you should never get close to the site of the actual eruption, and not just because of the lava. The eruption site can be prone to sudden closures. So again, check Safe Travel for all updates, including what to do and how to prepare and what not to do for the eruption site. And this includes don't bring pets and small children to the eruption site. You should dress for any kind of weather, bring plenty of food, make sure you got proper hiking boots. You should wear some sort of respirator as well. Do not get anywhere near the actual lava and try to stay upwind of the gases. Speaking of gases, the Icelandic Met Office has this very handy tool. It's an interactive map that shows the path of the volcanic gases in terms of where they are and where they're predicted to be and at what density. So I've linked to that in the description as well. And you can use this map to be able to more or less predict when you should be closing your windows at night. Finally, I just want to say that the only reason why anyone is able to get anywhere near this place, the only reason why people who sprain their ankles or perhaps break their legs or get otherwise injured near these eruption sites are saved at all is because of our rescue workers. They work around the clock at a moment's notice, no matter what kind of abuse they might get. And furthermore, they are volunteers. So in the description below, I'm linking to their donation page. You can make a one-time donation, or you can make monthly donations via credit card and PayPal. Furthermore, they've added that for every donation they get, they'll plant a tree, which is pretty nice of them too. In other news, a new report from Transport and Environment states in no uncertain terms that cruise ships are polluting European cities at levels not seen since before the pandemic. Now, I've linked the report in the description below so you can see how your city fares, but where Iceland is concerned, cruise ships emitted as much pollution last year as our entire fleet of cars. Our Minister for the Environment, Guðlaugur Þór Þórðarson, has responded to this report by saying that this emphasizes the need to provide electrification to ports all over the country, well, primarily the ports where cruise ships will dock. And I see where he's coming from. You know, that it might take time and it might take money, but by providing our clean electricity to these cruise ships, they won't have to just sit there idling their engines and spewing pollution everywhere just to keep the lights on. And again, I do understand where he's coming from. I mean, this is certainly a greener solution. And even though it will probably cost us money out of pocket and take some time, we could probably recoup those costs by charging cruise ships fees for using this electricity. But, you know, we could also just ban cruise ships from Iceland altogether. I mean, he is the minister for the environment, right? He's not the minister of tourism. So just putting it out there. But anyway, enough of my anti-cruise ship agenda for now. Reykjavik City Council has voted in favor of expanding the no-go zones for tour buses in the city. Now, just to give you a little backstory here, in 2017, City Council created certain no-go zones for tour buses, shown here in white, wherein tour buses were not allowed to drive. And these were primarily narrow streets, and they're also heavily residential. However, the west side of Reykjavik, called Vesturbær, was largely overlooked in this situation, which is strange because Vesturbær is heavily residential and it has some of the most beautiful tree-lined streets that you're going to see in Reykjavik. Seriously, when you visit here, do take the time to just walk around Vesturbær and look at the streets. It's a very pretty neighborhood. I highly recommend it. Anyway, tour buses are now banned in this neighborhood too, which is shown here in red. But to make up for this, the city has added more pickup and drop-off points for tour buses. And to be honest, I understand using a tour bus. I mean, our city bus system is really daunting, and not everybody has the same levels of accessibility and mobility. But if you have no mobility issues, I also highly recommend just walking when you can. Reykjavik is not that big of a city, especially downtown. It's really not that much. So that's if you have no mobility issues. It's not that much to cover by foot or even by bike or scooter. So yeah, look into that as well. Speaking of neighborhoods, I want to introduce you to a little Icelandic tradition known as Töðugjöld. Now, this is typically an annual festival held in small towns all around the country to commemorate like the last of the hay being harvested. There's often like music and bouncy castles, and people have a really great time. But in the South Icelandic town of Hella, there's also drama. You see, in Hella, they like to celebrate this festival by having different neighborhoods in the town designated different colors. And so, for example, if you're in a neighborhood that's designated green, you would put up green decorations around your house or your lawn or your sidewalk. It's kind of a neat little tradition. But this year, town council decided that one portion of a neighborhood that had been using green and orange would be using black and white. And let me tell you, the people who live in those streets did not take this well. Town council was reportedly inundated with complaints where people just flat out refused. And I can understand it. I mean, you spend years getting accustomed to green and orange, and then suddenly town council just springs this on you. Well, town council did dial it back, in fact, and said that, we will give you time to get, you can still use green and orange. We'll give you time to get used to this. But you know what? I don't expect them to back down from this. So stay tuned for more drama in the future. Iceland's population, according to the latest data from the National Registry, is now 394,200 people. So we're getting close to 400,000 people. How long will that take? Well, we saw 3,400 more people in Iceland over the past 3 months. So it's kind of reasonable to expect that we'll hit 400K on the inside of 6 months. It's all pretty fluid, though. Like 1,100 people were born here in the last annual quarter. 1,600 people moved out of the country, and immigrants exceeded those moving out of the country by 2,800. But enough about human beings. Let's get to some animal news, your favorite and mine. A group of ducks have been terrorizing the North Iceland town of Laugar. Specifically, these ducks love the town's swimming pool. Who knows why? But they've become frequent guests there. They're pretty much settled in, and they come and go as they please, but they love that swimming pool. And normally this wouldn't be a problem, but the ducks also leave behind, and this is a direct quote from the article, a significant amount of duck droppings. And pool management have been absolutely besides themselves. Like, they said that it takes some 7 hours to clean up after these ducks before they can even begin to open the pool Furthermore, they put up bird repellents. I can only assume they mean the ultrasonic kind of bird repellents, like not a scarecrow or something. And it still hasn't worked. So basically, all they can do is just wait for these ducks to get bored and fly elsewhere. And finally, a touching story involving our rescue workers again and a beloved dog. The dog in question, Misla, which roughly translates to mousy, was out hiking with its owner in East Iceland, just doing some mountain hiking, and the owner had stopped to take in the view, and Misla just bolted for whatever reason. You know how dogs are. It just took off and ended up going off of a cliff and landed, though, in a spot alive where the owner could not reach the dog. So the owner contacted the rescue squad to help, and they arrived en masse. And when they arrived on the scene, they assessed the situation, and they saw that the dog was some 70 meters down this ravine. And so the rescue workers were like, no problem. They just suited up, and they rappelled down there, and they rescued the dog and brought the dog back to its owner safe and sound. All told, only 3 hours transpired from the moment this man called the rescue squad and Misla was safe and sound again. And one rescue squad worker who was interviewed with it said that, yeah, sure, it's unusual to rescue a dog, but it's really good practice because they often rescue sheep from these situations. So again, if you have the money to spare, please donate to these people. And that's all I have for you today on the Reykjavik News Desk. Again, be sure and like and subscribe. And just as a little update, I will be having a new viewer poll on my Patreon very soon. Now, the viewer poll is a poll wherein patrons decide which single topic I cover in a single topic video. My latest single topic video, which was posted last Friday, was about the cultural and political divide between urban and rural Iceland. And that video was a lot of fun to do. So check it out if you want to get an idea of what these single topic videos are like. Also, my next Ask Me Anything session will be tomorrow at 1600 hours GMT. So again, that's for patrons. And if you want to get in on that or everything else that my Patreon has to offer, I put a link to it in the description below. Which reminds me, I want to thank Corinne Vasquez, Marion Ward, Christopher Hunter, Marianne Moores, Kimberly McDaniel, Iceman98, Octavia Hrunjonsdottir, and Alan Valgamay for being patrons on the $20 level. Ian Kingsley and Laura Johnson for being patrons on the $15 level, and Christine Trowbridge, Hafstein Himmelblom Gregenosson, Stephen Ellis, and Vivi Carvalho Schaffner for being patrons on the $10 level. You folks rock. That's all from me here at the Reykjavik News Desk. Be good to each other.